Okay, so there's a section in the exam on control flow in imperative languages. Now, when we talk about control flow, we mean sequence, which is the order of commands when you're programming. We mean conditions, also known as selections, which would be things that you might be familiar with, like if then else statements. Things that you might be less familiar with, such as select case statements. And then there's also iteration, which are the loops that you will have programmed with. Examples are while loops, for loops, and repeat loops. Before we have a look at some examples, you might be wondering what is an imperative language. Now, you're unlikely to be asked about it in the exam, but it might be nice to know what it means. It is a type of third generation, high-level programming language. We also might refer to it as a paradigm of programming. Other examples of paradigms might be object-oriented programming or action programming. And imperative programming is a way of programming that replicates an algorithm, such as a flowchart. So we can convert what we've put into a flowchart into some programming code. So, sequences. This is the order that programming code should be executed in. So let's have a look at an example using VB.NET. I've got a little program here to show some examples, and the first bit of code will calculate somebody's wages. So if I hit calculate wages, I put a break on code here just to see the order that things happen. So the first thing that happens is that it's going to ask the user to input the hours that they've worked for the week. So if I hit F11 in VB.NET, it'll move me through the code. So enter the hours I've worked for the week. I've only worked 10 hours this week. Okay. Move on to the next line, F11. Please enter your rate of pay. I get paid lots of money, £2.50 an hour. So put that in. And then it drops down to some if then else logic. So it's got to retrieve, hasn't it, the user's hours and pay rate before it can go and check and work out how much the person's been paid. So it's just checking to see if they've done less than or equal to 35 hours, in which case they won't be entitled to any overtime. So that's me. So F11, it's going to work out the hours times the rate, goes to end if, and then it should show me a formatted £25 I've earned this week. And does. So that is an example of sequence, the order that things are happening in the code. We just saw a condition there, an if then else statement. We also know them as selections. So let's have another look at an example of a if then else statement. So the if then else statement we just looked at worked out some wages. Another example might be where we have three separate if then statements. So if menu choice 1 is done, then do one thing. Menu choice equals 2, do another thing. If menu choice is 3, self-destruct. That's pretty inefficient coding to code it in that way. What might be better are what are called nested if statements. So this code does the same thing, does it in a more eloquent way, where we nest the alternative outcomes within each if then else statement. Another type of condition, which would be even more efficient, is one that you might not have coded before, but it's called a select case. So I've got a program that is called Tell Me My Grade. So first thing I do in Tell Me My Grade is enter a score, a percentage score. So say I scored 45 in an exam. This program should tell me what grade that is, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or U. So if I OK that, I get a breakpoint on my code. I'm just going to minimize code that we're not looking at this time. And we can see I've got this construct called select case, and I've got all these different cases going down. So we can step into this with F11. We know that the score was 45. Case is less than 10. It isn't, so it won't tell me that my grade is a U. Case is less than 20, no. Case is less than 30, no. Case is less than 40, no. Case is less than 50, in which case I should now get the grade D. So it drops onto that line, and then should show it for me at the end here, and does. So that's a select case, a very eloquent way of coding some conditions or selections. Iteration are our loops. For loop. Got a program here for the for loop, and here we're saying for my variable BT loop 1 to 10 do something. So it's going to do this whilst BT loop is less than 10, and it's going to do something 10 times. And what it's going to do is just build up a little message string with the numbers. So let's see it working. BT loop is currently 1, and then it's going to put 1 into my string variable MSG. Goes around the second time. BT loop is now 2, so it's going to put 2 into the message string. So we can see that the message string after this will be 1, 2. You can just about see that in the middle there, and it will keep running through like that 10 times in total until we finally get, if I just run through now, a message box like that. So the loop has facilitated that. A while loop is another way of doing a loop, but just in a different way. And it might be where you don't actually know how many times you want to loop something. Here I know that we want to loop something whilst BT loop is less than 10. Now I am incrementing BT loop by 1 each time, so it should do the same thing as the for loop. But if we were getting records from a database or a file and we didn't know how many there were, then this is where you would use a while loop. It's when we don't know how many times we want to loop generally. So again, F11 just steps through it, and it'll go through this 10 times, do the same thing. Just going to F5 it so it runs the whole thing. And there we go, get the same outcome. Incidentally, one last thing, you can have a for loop and an if statement combined. So on this last bit of code, there we go, we've got a for loop with an if statement inside. If I just take off the breakpoint and run it, all that's going to do actually is tell me that the first number in my loop is odd, second one even, odd, even, like that. And that's because the if statement is working out which ones are odd and which ones are even along the way. So you can have both things working together, conditions and sequencing. Hope that helps.